Hey family, I'm creating a series called 101 Consciousness Hacking Secrets. And I'm sharing here today consciousness hack number 12, which is meeting the moment. I found this to be one of the most powerful hacks that I've come across so far. And I guess the core problem that it addresses is that many of us haven't been taught how to feel and like to feel emotions. And I don't know, for me as a highly sensitive person growing up, I found myself overwhelmed much of the time, stressed, anxious, just fundamentally overwhelmed. And I've mentioned previously, like I've coped the best way I could, and that was to resist feeling. But what that did was push me up into my head, and then I found myself, thinking, overthinking. And so many of us, we don't effectively feel, and we overthink, and then that essentially then puts us into this, we just go round and around and around in our thoughts. And when I dive deeper into this to understand what was going on, what I discovered is that it's like a pattern. Through cognitive behavior therapy, we see that typically there's a trigger that gets, something will happen as we brush up against reality, and we get triggered, and it's typically like an unresolved emotional wound, something that we learned in our adolescence. It triggers then a thought process, which then has associated feelings, which then drives behavior. And we get caught into this loop once we're triggered is thoughts, feelings, behavior. And we go round and round in this loop, and we can get stuck here. I'm not sure if you, although I'm sure you can appreciate, and at some stage in your life you've been stuck here where the mind's just looping around and we're just caught. And when we get caught there, I know for me, growing up, I suffered. I suffered a lot because I'd get caught in these loops, and the mind is just like can be relentless. And so I'm sharing here a technique which I found to be one of the most powerful ways to actually break that pattern and quickly. And to do that, it's looping back to what was the core problem in the first place um, is learning how to feel again. And I call this meeting the moment. And what it does is that in meeting the moment, what we're going to do is, and I'll do this as an exercise in a moment, and I want you to do it with me if you're watching this, is we're going to break that pattern. So I'll talk more in the future about how we resolve or how we heal, discharge those unresolved emotional wounds. But today, looking at that thought, emotional feeling, behavior, what I learned is that if you focus in, and if we just focus in on what we're feeling in the moment and just feel that without going into the story, without pushing up into the head, but we just tune in and feel what it is that we're feeling, then it breaks this pattern. And because the feeling is, it's like emotion, energy and motion, and it dissolves, it passes through really quickly. And I want you to, we'll drop into this in a moment, but what it does then, as we learn to meet our feelings, because what we tend to do is we unconsciously or consciously we're pushing against, we don't want to feel. We've been taught not to feel. And what happens is there's this, it builds up below the surface, and we're unconsciously resisting it, but what happens is it's persisting and it's driving that loop. But by just simply tuning in and going, what am I feeling in this moment, and feel it, we meet it consciously, then that energy is released and it passes through, and it collapses that pattern, it collapses that cycle. And then underlying that is the energy, is like the life force, the aliveness that's all around us, that we disconnected from, because we're caught in these mental loops, we're caught in these loops. And so as we learn to meet the moment and feel what's in the moment, then those patterns collapse, and then we feel connected again. We feel we find what it is that we're ultimately looking for. And that is that sense of aliveness, wholeness, connection. And so let's do this as an exercise now. If you're watching, or if you're watching this at a later point, if you're live with me, amazing. If not, let's do it when you're watching. And it's called, meeting the moment. And so how we do this, and this is something that you can do anywhere at any time when you have just a few minutes, and it changes your state. It's so freaking powerful. So I'm going to invite you to close down your eyes. And then we just tune in, we bring our attention in. And we tune in, and this may be challenging at first, but it's a practice. And on Friday, I want to offer a free 1-hour masterclass where we're going to dive deeper into this. I want to show you how to do it, and we'll practice it over the course of an hour. And hopefully you'll walk away from that class with a practical tool that you can use that's gonna, I feel like it'll change your reality. And I know it does for me. It's so powerful. So with our eyes closed down, we bring our attention inwards, and we just tune in. And what am I feeling in this moment? And so it can take a moment, but we try to label it. And so we're tuning into the feeling, and what we want to do is not think about it. We just feel. What am I feeling? And it might be like anxiousness, it might be stress, it might be like overwhelm, or it might be ease. Whatever it is, we're just honoring what is arising in this moment and feeling it. And label it, and without going into the story around why it's there. We just want to honor the raw emotion and feel it and meet it, and then just allow it. Without any resistance, we just meet it and we feel it. And then we tune in again. This moment. What are we feeling in this moment? It may be the same, or it might be different. Most often it's different because the energies move through. So what are you feeling in this moment? And again, label it. And without any resistance, we feel it. And without going into the story around why it's there, we just feel it. We welcome it. We meet it consciously. And then this moment. What are you feeling in this moment? Without going into the story, we just honor the raw emotion. We meet it consciously and we feel it. We allow it without any resistance. And we find that we just drop in and we drop in and we drop in. And underlying all the mental noise and the unconscious resistance to what we're feeling, we find the stillness. We find like a homeostasis, an underlying sense of well-being. And it may take a few times to do that. So let's just do it one more time. What are you feeling in this moment? We label it. What is the emotion? And then we feel it without any resistance. and without going into the story. And most often what we find is that what we're looking for, that sense of wholeness, that sense of connection, it's already here. It's just that the mind's making too much noise. We're caught in a program and we feel disconnected from it. So like I mentioned, on Friday, 6 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, I think it's 1 p.m. PST and 10 p.m. Europe CET time, hosting a 1-hour masterclass where we'll dive deeper into this and looking at building this as a practice for you to be able to use as a tool throughout the day, but also in extended practices, because I find that when you sit for longer and you're just attuning to your feelings, then you find the underlying sense of love and connection, and to bask in that for extended periods of time is really beautiful. It activates insights, it activates a greater sense of knowing and problem solving. It's really, really beautiful. So I hope you can join me on Friday for a deeper dive into this. Much love.